We haven't always been here, but this neighborhood, oh it has. Long before there were streets or homes, these cursed grounds waited, patient and silent, for those who would be lost. For those whose lives would end before they truly began. For those who would never willingly leave. We are the echoes of different times, fractured remnants of lives that once walked the earthly realm of this place. Each of us lived here once, in fleeting moments, and each of us met our end too soon. The details blur with time, our memories growing hazy since the last one joined us. Yet some truths remain, etched like faint whispers in the air. Rolf was the first. He came from a distant land, carrying the old world ways of his family like a mantle. His life here began before the neighborhood even had a name. His family farmed these fields long before houses rose from the soil. Rolf died in 1903, crushed beneath the hooves of a bull that escaped its pen. Even in death, he lingers, tending phantom animals, though he keeps no cattle here. Occasionally, he pauses his endless work to watch over the other spirits, his ancient ways a tether to the past. Johnny was lonely, lost even before death claimed him. When he moved to these lands in the shadow of Rolf's farm, he found solace in his imagination. His first true friend was Rolf, though not of this world anymore. Together, they roamed the wild countryside, climbing trees and crafting adventures. But Johnny's joy was fleeting. In 1922, tuberculosis dragged him into the abyss with his imaginary friend Plank, the last by his side. Now, even in the afterlife, Johnny frolics aimlessly, his laughter faint in the deserted streets. Eddie arrived next, a fast-talking schemer from New York who landed here in 1932, the shadow of the Great Depression looming over his family. The neighborhood was taking shape then, but Eddie's life was shaped by desperation. He conned and swindled, chasing scraps of comfort, blind to the cost. His end came in 1939 when a failed con forced him to flee. He drowned in the river, cold water silencing his schemes. Yet even now, Eddie's spectral form endlessly pursues riches that will never fill his empty hands. Sarah and Ed. They came together, brother and sister bound by tragedy. By the late 1940s, the Cul-de-Sac was nearly complete, a planned haven in a world still reeling from war. Their father had perished overseas, leaving their mother to toil endlessly. Sarah became domineering, desperate for control in a chaotic world. Ed, on the other hand, retreated inward, shutting out reality entirely. Together, they haunt the streets they once played on, shadows of a fractured family seeking balance they will never find. The neighborhood waits as it always has. It doesn't forget those who wander into its grasp, those who find themselves trapped in a cycle of shadows and regrets. And though the stories are blurred, the truth remains. The cul-de-sac is not a home. It's a purgatory. Ed didn't just withdraw from the world, he shut it out entirely, retreating into the glow of monster movies and comic books. His obsession became his sanctuary, transforming him into a bumbling fool, disconnected from reality. In his isolation, he let the horrors of life slip away, immersing himself in make-believe until nothing else mattered. But in 1953, the illusion shattered. He and his sister Sarah died together in a mangled car wreck, their mother's desperate screams lost in the crunch of twisted metal as they journeyed to visit their grandparents. Then came Naz, a vision of fleeting beauty born in the haze of the late 1960s. She was free-spirited, a flower child with a hypnotic allure that drew men like moths to a flame. But her whims couldn't save her from the darkness that crept into her life. In the sweltering summer of 1979, a killer escaped from a nearby asylum and found his way into her home. What happened next was unspeakable. Violated and murdered alongside her family, Naz's spirit fractured. She erased her memories of her parents and siblings, burying them so deeply that, in the afterlife, they no longer existed. With no tether to the demands of her past life, she spends her spectral days lounging, flirting, and evading the horror she once endured. Double D. Double D joined soon after, the product of a cold, controlling household in the greedy, corporate-driven 1980s. His parents, though rarely present, dictated his every move with suffocating precision. Double D became brilliant, a meticulous mind obsessed with science and invention. But his thirst for experimentation proved fatal. In 1986, a gas leak met the open flame of his Bunsen burner, reducing his house and him to smoldering ruins. Even in death, Double D remains bound by the orders of parents he hasn't seen in decades, continuing their commands as though their ghostly shadows loom behind him. Kevin was born on the day Double D died, and in life, he couldn't have been more different. Raised in a broken home, he was bold, angry, and cynical, lashing out at anyone weaker than himself. His father's drunken rages haunted him, and one winter night in 1999, Kevin stood up to the man who had terrorized him for years. The beating was savage, and Kevin didn't survive the journey to the hospital. In death, Kevin built a facade, a dream of a life where his father was distant, but doted on him with gifts. Yet no amount of spectral affection can undo the anger that still burns within him. Jimmy was the last child to join the Cul-de-Sac, his frail form succumbing to leukemia in the year 2000. He had lived a life of sickness, confined to a small bedroom while the world moved on without him. His overprotective parents shielded him from everything, and Jimmy grew up a ghost of a boy long before death claimed him. When his suffering finally ended, his soul lingered, as pale and fragile as his body had been in life. The Canker Sisters. The Canker Sisters are something altogether different, a darkness born not of earthly pain, but infernal origins. They were never alive, never tied to the mortal world. Demonic entities akin to succubi, they manifest in the cul-de-sac to torment the spirits trapped there. They move with impossible swiftness, appearing anywhere, anytime, with a sinister grin. For reasons no one understands, they are drawn to the Eds, preying on their weaknesses. While the Eds are their favorite victims, the entire neighborhood fears and loathes the sisters who revel in the misery they sow. The cul-de-sac. The cul-de-sac is no ordinary place. It is a liminal space, a purgatory for restless souls. Each spirit bears the scars of their life, the weight of their death, and the burden of their regrets, but none can escape. The cul-de-sac is patient, its shadows deep and its silence eternal, waiting to claim whoever wanders into its grasp next.